Hello everyone, I'm Nini FC and this is Blue Lions TV, and today I'm bringing you guys a match review of France's 2-1 win over Australia today in the World Cup. Thank you to everyone that watched on live stream with me. I'm planning on doing much more of them as the tournament progresses. You guys, in this match review today, I'm going to be talking about Didier Deschamps. I'm going to be talking about France and their midfield problem. I'm going to be talking about just how fantastic Australia were, plus much more. But just starting with the match review and starting with how the first half went. France set up in a 4-3-3. Australia set up in a 4-2-3-1. And really, France were very testing in the first opening minutes. First 6 minutes, Australia was struggling at times. The amount of fouls they kept giving away. The amount of chances France were creating as well. They had 3 shots on goal in the first 5 minutes. You were thinking, wow, France are really looking up for this. It's looking exciting. It's going to be a massive problem for Australia. But credit to Australia as the game progressed. The players' discipline switched on. They played with confidence. They were definitely a confident team because they knew what they had to do. They knew what was expected of them, and they were definitely drilled fantastically by, and I always butcher his name, obviously, the Dutch manager of the Australian national team with his assistant Van Bommel. But did France make it easy for Australia to really keep their defensive discipline and their shape? Well, of course they did, and I really blame this down to Didier Deschamps. I think with Deschamps, it's just how he's always set up this France national team. Deschamps is a pragmatic style of manager, and what do I mean by that? Well, look at how his teams play. None of the midfielders are really allowed to break their lines and attack the spaces to create overloads in the final third. Really, the whole point of the midfield is to keep their shape and to really maintain the balance of the team when they're off the ball. Do France press aggressively and close down opposition? No. They tend to, keep that mid position in midfield where they're not going to stay too deep, but they're not going to push up too high. Because what they're hoping to do is to create chances on the counter-attack for their front 3 players. Now, of course, the benefit of this approach is that you do have that stability in the team. It makes it harder for opposition to close you down. Plus, you get to play to the strengths of a lot of your counter-attacking players. But some of the downsides of playing this manner of football is the fact that the midfield don't really get involved in the game as much due to the fact that the game doesn't go through midfield. A lot of times the game's going around the midfield. It does come down the flanks quite a lot, and it's all about playing direct passes to the front 3. And of course, anytime you're playing direct, you're basically bypassing the midfields. And this was the main issue as to why France were pretty poor throughout this entire game and why this was very easy for Australia to defend off the ball. Now, what didn't help France was that Sidibe didn't start for some reason with Mendy, and apologies, I didn't have enough time to do my research, but is he not fully fit just yet? That could be an option. I'm not too sure. I thought he was fit enough already. To start Hernandez and Pavard over these two really wasn't the way to go. Now, these guys really are central defenders, not even really fullbacks. When they can play out wide, it's more in a supportive capacity. It's more to defend than attack and take the ball. And the reason why I'm stressing this is so you guys can understand the context and so you can sympathise with them. I felt that with Pavard, he was probably the poorest player in the French team. I'd probably have to say Hernandez was second. And I understand why they were so poor, because it's not their game. The amounts of times that they were constantly losing possession of the ball, the amount of times they were passing the ball back into midfield, the amount of times that they weren't linking up effectively with the front 3 as well, constantly overhitting passes or the crosses hitting the first man as well. And you definitely miss out when you don't have guys like Mendy or Sidibe playing, especially when you're playing this pragmatic style of football, because there's even more responsibility for your wide players to be more efficient out wide, especially when it comes to the fullbacks. How many times were Pavard and Hernandez in decent positions where if that was a Mendy or Sidibe, they would have looked to have taken the ball straight to the byline, attacked their man, created an opportunity for themselves, and obviously that could have really benefited the front 3 even more, and it could have disrupted Australia's shape even more. But instead, it was always the safe option or the poor option, and it was no in between. And when you've got guys constantly losing the ball out wide, what can your midfield do? Because the midfield can only get forward once the stability is there in the final third for them to move forwards. And this is why there's a greater responsibility on the fullbacks, because they need to be technically adept to be able to keep the ball, because they're basically holding possession, waiting for the midfield to come and support the rest of the play. Now, I know this is a very detailed and long-winded explanation, but I had to give you guys the context so you can understand what the issues were. And this was the main issue as to why France couldn't disrupt Australia, and this is why it was easy for Australia to keep their shape throughout this game. Now, with Australia, their basic defensive structure was a 4-4-2, two banks of four, and how Australia pressed off the ball was the fact that they were very aggressive when it came to closing down the players out wide. How many times were Dembele and Mbappe isolated where they had 2 or 3 players around them? How many times were Pavard and Hernandez getting dispossessed as well? And this is why France weren't really creating anything on the offence. And there was another issue created for France when they did decide to use Pavard and Hernandez, and that's the fact that because these guys aren't great out wide, it forced Dembele and Mbappe to have to stay out even wider to try and touch the ball and get into the game. And by doing that, it meant that the front three was very isolated. Griezmann was by himself. I thought Sainsbury for Australia was fantastic in regards to dealing with Griezmann. His reading of the game was great. He dealt with everything. Griezmann didn't have any luck or chance against him. And of course, it's making it even easier because in a way, you're effectively making the France attack very static and very stagnant. Meaning that if you're a team that's defending off the ball with that structure, it makes your life even easier. Now, what could have Didier Deschamps have done in this game? Well, he could have allowed guys like Pogba and Tolisso to break the lines more and create those overloads in the middle. If there's a massive gap between your front three, that means there's space for the midfield players to run into to try and attack the spaces. And by doing that, you create those overloads, dragging the Australian defenders and midfielders out of possession, and that's how you create those overloads. Of course, it wasn't to be though, and in the second half, of course, France did start with more tenacity. They were closing down the opposition more in their own half, and they were the better team during the first part of the second half in the game. And in a way, when that penalty did come, it wasn't against the runner play, it was deserved, and it came from that guy Pogba again. I felt Pogba was the best France player today. Everything good in an attacking sense came through Pogba. He was great with his passing. He didn't lose the ball. He was linking up the play when he could. And in a way, it was even harder for Pogba because nothing was going through the midfields. But of course, Pogba plays a fantastically weighted pass. And here's where the controversy comes in regards to the penalty. Now, some people thought it wasn't a penalty. It was one of the clearest penalties you can see. Of course, this is a good thing that VAR is actually here because there isn't any confusion anymore. Even seeing the replay, you could definitely see that it was a penalty. And I'm going to explain to you as to why it was a penalty. And that was the fact that, yes, the Australian player did touch the ball, but he didn't touch the ball and make enough contacts with it to drastically change the direction of the ball. Basically, when he touched it, Griezmann was still able to get on the end of that ball. But because of the momentum of the Australian player, basically he went through Griezmann, stopping Griezmann from having a shot on goal. And this is why it was a blatant penalty. But credit to Australia and still maintain what they were doing throughout the game. And they equalised literally less than 10 minutes later. Now, Moy, fantastic delivery in the box. I mean, this was perfect delivery. The pace, the swerve. And Titi, I'm not going to call it a moment of madness. I think that is harsh. Sometimes it's just a body reaction. I think because he was already wasn't in line with the rest of the defense, he was basically his body balance wasn't on point, meaning that he was basically jumping behind himself to try and get on the end of the ball. And because he was jumping behind, he obviously used his arms for leverage. Obviously, unfortunately, the ball hit his arm. It was a clear penalty though, but it was unfortunate by Titi. And this is why you guys, positioning from defenders is so key, because you stop these mistakes from happening if you get in position straight away and don't take chances. Miles Jedinak takes the penalty, equalises, and it was deserved for Australia because, again, they were very good throughout this game. And it wasn't too much of an issue playing against France due to how easy France was making it for Australia. The game's going on. Didier Deschamps makes a substitution, takes off Griezmann and takes off Dembele, and people are thinking, well, why is he doing that? I can understand the logic as to why Didier Deschamps did make this decision. And that's basically the fact that, with Dembele and Mbappe, Dembele in particular, he's very direct. He likes to stay out wide a lot. What he wanted to have was he wanted more players to play more central. So he thought, I need to bring on Giroud because we can bypass the midfield as France were already doing by playing those long balls to him. I've got Fekir playing closer to Giroud as well, with Mbappe being able to move in as well. Of course, that gives more responsibility to the fullbacks, but again, it was helping to create more chances for France when that move did happen. And this is how they effectively scored the winner. Again, that main man Pogba, and I'll never understand why he gets criticised. I really think it's just this stupid football tribalism at its finest. But with Pogba again, he sets the tempo again. Great weighted one-touch passes, 1-2s with Giroud. extremely fortunate with how the ball went in the back of the net. But again, everything good came from Pogba in this game today. He was the man of the match in my opinion, followed by Kante. He was fantastic at sweeping the danger up and starting moves as well. But you guys, the game kind of did peter out after that. Australia, they kept their discipline, they tried to get back in, but by then it was too late. France had won the game. Again, it came down to individual brilliance, and of course, with pragmatic managers, it's always the individual brilliance, all the key moments that always ends up saving them all the time. Do I think Didier Deschamps is doing enough to get the best out of this France team? Of course not. When you got guys like Pogba, Saliso, there's front three as well, and the guys on the bench, I definitely don't think it's enough. But will it be enough to get them through the tournament? It's gonna depend, it definitely will. Anyway, you guys, thank you for watching today's match review. Please like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you for watching. I hope you're enjoying these World Cup videos, and I'll see you guys later.